Well, yeah. What I didn't anticipate with this role is I effectively have been playing the part of Mama Bear, where we have mostly new business owners who are coming in and potentially spending their life savings or taking out massive loans, and they've got families to support, and this is all in, and there are so many ways that they can get taken advantage of, obvious ways and less obvious ways, and I feel like I've made it my like life's mission to be like, nope, you're being taken advantage of. Here's what you do instead.
All right, today we're outside because I've got two guests, and we could either stuff three people in my tiny basement studio, or it's spring in Idaho. We can sit on the patio and hang out. So you guys have met Ben already. Ben is my brother. He's the head of technology for Starting Strength Gyms. There's an episode, I think it was episode 2, where we talk about tech at Starting Strength Gyms.
I think so.
So check that out if you want to know more about Ben and what he does for us. And then he's more here for moral support, because the star of the show is Jen. But Jen's an engineer and a little introverted, so kind of nervous to come on the show. But we got booze and moral support, so it should be easy. Jen is, I guess the easiest way to describe her role, or as to title her role, would be COO. She runs operations for us at the moment. But what that entails day to day is real estate, construction, and a bunch of other minutia. But if you want to do real estate and construction well, those are full-time jobs in themselves, and Jen is balancing a bunch of stuff on her own, and somehow hasn't quit yet. She's probably thought about it a bunch of times, but she just opened 7 gyms in 3 months towards the end of last year and early part of this year.
Well, yes.
Well, but I mean, thanks for the credit, but mostly you.
And out of the people here, it was all you.
Correct. So Jen's role, the way it works basically is Luke Schroeder, the head of business development for Starting Strength Gyms and the owner of Starting Strength Cincinnati, is the person a franchise prospect speaks to first. And then once that person is qualified and the feeling out process is complete and both parties agree to move forward, sign the franchise agreement, and then everyone, the franchise owner at that point is under Jen's responsibility. And then Jen runs them through all the pre-opening stuff, including real estate search, construction, and then getting set up. And Ben is responsible for things that apply pre-opening and post-opening, because once Jen's done and the gym is open, the gym is then under Nick Delgadillo's responsibility. So he's the main point of contact of the franchise company, who's responsible for supporting franchisees once they're open, and he has a small team. And then Ben's kind of, so those are like your verticals, right? And then Ben's kind of horizontal. Ben sits across everything. Ben is involved in the pre-opening stage, he's involved in the post-opening stage, he's involved with anything that has technology. So the main reason I wanted to have Jen on today and use Ben as a way to get her on was to just talk about the opening process. For those of you that are interested in opening a gym, for those of you that are fans of the brand and just kind of want to know all the inner workings of what we're up to, I was thinking it'd be cool to have Jen walk us through it. So the first thing I'll say is real estate and construction is probably the worst part about this whole thing. All the stuff that happens pre-opening is quite awful. And a lot of it's outside of our control. We're doing our best to put as much of it under our control as possible. Other than dealing with the government, I think construction and real estate are the worst parts of this whole thing. But we've put some things in place and made things a whole lot better. So we'll go through that. So Jen, what happens? Luke decides the person's a hell yes. The person decides they're a hell yes. We picked a great market. The person sends the check. Franchise owner is now on board, and then the let's go email gets sent. So what happens next from a franchise owner's point of view?
A lot of figuring out who's who and kind of where to start the learning process. We've got a whole bunch of people on the team that walk franchise owners through their specific field. So anything from real estate, construction, signage, online coaching, marketing,
Sales training.
I mean, all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of just like a big, like, here's who we are and here's everything that you're going to learn between now and whatever, 6 to 9 months from now when you're opening a gym. And the franchise owner talks to each person that's sort of responsible for that realm. And then they get to know their franchise owners, start to ask lots of questions, and start the learning process. While doing that, kind of in tandem, the real estate search starts, which is obviously the first of two things that allows you to be an official business owner and operator. And that's market research. You figure out where in your market you want to put a gym. So we have particular demographics that we're shooting for. We want high total population, high daytime population, and high income generally. So we figure out where in that market those three things are. And then once we identify those areas in that market, then we start to hone in on sites. So we do a site selection process in those territories. And that looks like any location where there's a shopping center on a road with 30,000 vehicles per day or eyeballs per day, depending on what market you're in. Or really busy, or more, at least 30,000, or a shopping center with a lot of traffic. And we try to find higher end shopping centers where we're looking at Whole Foods or Lululemon or Apple Store or something like that, where we know that the co-tenancy is going to drive people that can afford our gyms to come train with us. So start the site search process, start to pinpoint particular shopping centers that kind of meet these parameters. And then we just go through the basic process of figuring out what the size of the space is. Is it going to work? Is it too wide? Is it too narrow? Are the ceilings too short? What's the subfloor made out of? Is it wooden joists? Is it concrete? Just kind of go through all the particulars to make sure the site's truly feasible. Once we figure out the site is truly feasible, then we start the LOI process. So put together basically a document of, I think we have 36 bullet points now that we've identified that we send to a landlord, we being the broker, but the broker sends to the landlord and says, here are these 36 points that we want to cover and make sure that we get right in the lease. Anything from the lease term. So we want at least a 10-year lease. So sometimes that's in the form of a true, like the first term is 10 years and then you get renewal terms, or sometimes that's maybe a 5-term with a handful of renewal terms. But you want at least a 10-year lease so that you're not, you're spending all this money to do construction and opening this gym, and in 5 years you don't have to start the process over. It would not make financial sense to do that. So we start with at least a 10-year lease.
Because the length of the franchise agreement is 10 years. So.
And like franchise agreement, yeah. But there's a lot of work that has to be done to get a gym open for business. Everything from construction documents to signage to actual construction, and it's months and months of work, and it's expensive. So you want to make sure you're in a position where you know how much you're going to be spending for at least 10 years, and you know you're going to be in a good spot for 10 years. So go through the LOI process. Ideally, a franchise owner selects a handful of locations they want to submit an LOI on, so that they have some options. But right now the market is extremely challenging. It's apparently a historical low with retail availability. So we're kind of in this position where we'd like to have maybe 3 LOIs going at one time. We typically just have one. And it is a landlord's market. So the landlord basically can say whatever they want, and they can ask for whatever they want, and they often get it these days. So it's a little challenging from a negotiating standpoint, because the landlords are basically like, take it or leave it. There's 14 people banging down our door for this space. So,
especially in the markets we're going into.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're going into markets where people are moving to instead of where people are moving from. Yep. And so there's more demand for everything, including commercial real estate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which is kind of unexpected. I guess I figured with COVID and small businesses shutting down that might not be the case, but It is a historical low in availability. So
Is that nationwide?
nationwide.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, I can understand why that's the case in Tampa, where real estate is, I think, more expensive than Manhattan was before the pandemic.
Yep.
But I can't imagine why that would be the case in LA.
Yeah, LA too. I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
I don't know if anyone understands the economy at the moment. It's quite a disaster.
Yeah, I definitely don't.
Yeah.
So like when you bring those points that you, or the broker brings those certain points and attributes that you've identified to the LOI process, how often do you find places that meet all those or where you're able to get them all to match up?
It really depends on the market. Sometimes we have markets where there are multiple locations that come up immediately. It's like, oh yeah, this is going to be easy. And then for some reason, some markets that just don't have exactly what we're looking for. I don't know why. I don't know what the difference is. And
Like
it's
Boston.
not like Boston, but Boston's a little unique because it's an older city. But even in newer cities where there's a lot of single-story retail, which is what we're looking for, there are just places that are challenging to find the right place, the perfect location. Indianapolis is an example where you have a lot of the wealth is in the suburbs, like northern suburbs, but the population is in the downtown area or south of the wealthy suburbs. So it's like you have to kind of balance between finding the location where you're going to have the population that can afford our gym memberships while having the enough total population and daytime population to fill the gym. So
You need to combine those variables. What you essentially need is a high enough, a dense enough population of people with high disposable income.
yeah.
The overall density actually doesn't matter. The density of those people is what matters, and that's the tricky part.
Yeah. For example, in Houston, which when I went back and looked at the demographics of Starting Strength Houston, there are 75,000 households within 3 miles, I believe it was, or maybe 100,000 households. Over 50,000 households in 3 miles make $100,000 or more a year. So it's an amazing population that they have in that area. It was really surprising. That's the highest, that's the most densest, wealthiest population that we've seen so far.
And it just so happens that it's the highest priced gym. There are gyms that are as expensive as it is, but it is our highest pricing tier. JD's charging $455 a month,
Yep.
which is $35 a session for 3 times a week.
And it's on the wait list.
Full with the wait list. He's our highest grossing gym to date.
Yep.
And that street that he's on, is it Shepherd? Inside the Loop in Houston, and the visibility of the location. I mean, he's paying a lot for rent. When I built the model, I was thinking $5,000 a month would be kind of like an upper limit.
Yep.
He's paying $7,000 a month. But I also thought $315 would be the upper limit of our membership. He's charging $455. So his expenses are high. He's got great coaches, got a perfect location, very tight space, by the way. And I wanted to ask you, so what are the space requirements at this point? Is it 1,400 to 2,000 square feet that we're looking for still?
So yeah, in general, what we've kind of more focused on, we're looking at total square footage from a top end threshold perspective, because now that rents are so much more expensive than they were even 2 years ago, a 2,000 square foot space isn't always feasible anymore. So what we're looking for really is the width of the space. So 19 feet 5 inches interior width. So drywall to drywall is our minimum, and any more than that, you're kind of just paying for extra square footage. I mean, it's nice to have the elbow room, but you're just paying for a bigger walkway, basically.
I don't want to turn this into a bitch session, but there's some things about this that are surprising to me, especially the fact that landlords don't know the size of the spaces that they're leasing out.
Right. Yeah. So in the LOI,
It's so dumb.
landlords don't know the size of the space they're leasing out, and brokers don't know the address of the space they're leasing out. In addition to other very basic parameters. But yeah, so we we have to send depending on the space, we'll sometimes have to send a team in there and like our architect to go and actually take the dimensions, because you pay per square foot. I don't want our franchise owners paying any more money than what their actual square footage is. And when you're looking at square footage of a space, you're not just looking at the interior shell of your space. You're looking at the center line of the demising wall, which is the wall that separates your space from the adjacent tenant space, to the center line of the other demising wall, and the storefront, and then the back of the gym. So you're kind of looking at this core square footage, and I want to make sure that the franchise owners get that right in the LOI. So, like I said, they're not paying $1 more than they need to be paying. And oftentimes, the square footage that's presented in the initial LOI before we go in and measure is generous, to say the least. So,
I remember the first time because Jen and I shared an office / bedroom for a while. I remember the first time I heard you negotiating with a real estate broker about the square footage of a space that you had physically taken measurements of. And I just didn't understand, like, why. Okay, but yeah, that's the way commercial real estate is.
Yeah,
It's 2022. You can just kind of want things to be a certain way, and whether or not the facts align is irrelevant.
Just write them down.
yeah. So it's you have to sort of argue a couple things, and then like I said, arguing about the address of the space happens probably 80% of the time.
Right.
And oftentimes we'll get like missed in the LOI negotiations, and then it gets to lease, and then I have to be like, hey, don't forget you have the wrong address in your lease.
I guess the way to summarize why we're so discontent with the way landlords operate is because our business ethos is try to do right by people. So basically, if something benefits me and it hurts you, I'm not interested in doing it, even if I don't like you. If something benefits me and it's neutral to you, that's cool. If something benefits me and it benefits you, awesome. How can we help each other out, right? That's kind of like making sure everyone in the ecosystem has some sort of incentive to do the thing that makes the whole thing work, which is really what this multi-tiered business is. It's aligning incentives. And I just don't feel like landlords could give a shit about anything other than I want as much money per square foot as possible for as long of a term as possible, with as little money outlaid from me as possible. And if I have to compromise on any of those things, then I'd rather just leave the place empty.
It certainly seems that way. Yeah. You'll every once in a while you get a small scale landlord, because a lot of the landlords we deal with are national, like, real estate investment trust landlords. They're huge. This is just one of hundreds of shopping centers that they own in their investment portfolio. Every once in a while, we'll find a landlord that's really just a guy or a gal, a human that owns a shopping center. You can actually have a conversation directly with that person instead of having to go through broker, lawyer. In most instances, you actually never talk to the landlord, ever.
Yeah.
So it's every once in a while it's nice to get into a shopping center. In Columbus is an example where it's just a guy that owns a shopping center, and it's part of his his personal investment portfolio. And we email directly with the guy, and it's a relationship.
Right.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, but it often does not happen like that, and it's purely monetary.
Instead of human to human, it's human to bureaucracy. And what that means is sometimes there are rules and standards that they're requiring from their prospective tenants that don't actually make sense. And then trying to unravel the bureaucracy and get an exception made is a truly awful experience.
Yeah.
The number of times that we've had to take manual decibel measurements at different types of sound measuring specifications just because the landlords and their lawyers didn't understand sound.
Yep.
And then so we would just have to adhere to their bizarre requirements and go take measurements. And
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that, Jen? That whole what they were asking for and what happened? Do you remember?
Yeah. I mean, in general, oftentimes, so in one of the 38 points in our LOI is that the landlord will not require soundproofing. Half the time, the landlord's broker scratches that out and says landlord will require soundproofing, and then they're say,
like, "Thanks for the idea."
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Sometimes I'm like, we should just take this out. So, and then they'll say to be, discussed during lease negotiations, which is my least favorite thing.
Right. That means we're not budging.
No. Yeah. So you get to lease negotiations, and then there's language, for example, where it says if we bring in an acoustical engineer and they measure, sound in the adjacent tenant suite that's higher than 65 decibels for some period of time, measured in dBA, that you're, basically in breach of release and we can kick you out, in summary.
Which we're fine with, other than when Chase Lindley is power snatching.
Right.
Yeah.
1,200 pounds or whatever. Yeah.
But and some decibel thresholds are okay, fine, that's reasonable. But we had one recent lease where the decibel threshold was 50 decibels measured in the adjacent tenant space, which if you go into any tenant space where people are just having a normal conversation like we are now, it's going to be more than 50 decibels.
It's more than 50 decibels outside, and all you can hear, and you can hear the birds chirping.
I was going to say right now it'd be more than that.
Right. So it's kind of like a.
That was the one that you and I went and took measurements at the Boise gym to check, right?
Yeah.
We're just like, that's impossible.
It's basically like us having to take the step, which is fine to do, but to sort of educate the landlord's attorney effectively on what is actually practical. And luckily, we usually always actually have been able to get them to kind of be a little bit more generous in their decibel thresholds.
That's good to hear. Because attorneys don't understand business, but they pretend to, and they can't acknowledge that they don't. So I'm glad that even though they don't understand sound engineering, they can admit that they don't and have their minds changed. Yeah,
and I try to give them some information so that they can hear for themselves and see for themselves. And we also have an excellent national real estate attorney that's pretty stellar in the way that she negotiates some of this stuff. So
yeah, she really cares about the franchise owners and wants to put them in good situations, because these are people that are typically inexperienced with doing deals this big for this long. It's their first one. They don't know what they don't know. And those lease agreements are a minefield of potential litigation. And if you have a problem with a space that you've spent 6 figures building out, that is a very nasty situation if that 6+ figures you spent was your life savings.
Yep.
So to have you looking after them and then have Karen looking after them, I know the franchise owners really appreciate it. And whenever we go to an event, we do a little round table of what's going great, what could be better, how can we help? And when we ask people what's going well, everyone always talks about how great the support is from the franchise company. And they're all looking at Jen when they say that, because Jen saves their asses, before the gym's open, because there's so many things that can go wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's what I didn't anticipate with this role is I effectively have been playing the part of Mama Bear, where we have mostly new business owners who are coming in and potentially spending their life savings or taking out massive loans, and they've got families to support, and this is all in. And there are so many ways that they can get taken advantage of, obvious ways and less obvious ways, and I feel like I've made it my life's mission to be like, nope, you're being taken advantage of. Here's what you do instead. And this is why, we've built the team that we've built, and we've got construction people on the team now. We've got specialists on the team now, so that people are less likely to be taken advantage of. I mean, you can still be taken advantage of for sure, but less likely.
Right, because if a vendor makes a claim and we have no experience, no information, we can go try and do some research or find out. But if we have an expert on the team who's done it for 10 years, we can vet their claim against this person's skills and experience and decide if it's reasonable or not, and then have a negotiating position.
Yeah. So, so once a franchise owner selects they finalize the LOI, then kind of the fun starts, what I call it, which is more stress. But stress is good.
Stress builds character.
Stress builds character.
Stress recovery, adaptation.
That's right.
Your kids will piss you off less once you're able to handle the stress of being an entrepreneur.
Oh, that's so true.
But if they're compounded stresses, no guarantees on that.
It'll be challenging at first, but I always tell people, it's hard now, but you're going to open for business, do well, things will relax a little bit from the super just panic mode, and you'll kind of look back and be like, okay, that was a really good experience. Now I know, maybe what to do next time, and just to probably be a little bit less stressed out next time. Hopefully.
John Fraser was about to expatriate and become a Canadian. He was so tired of dealing with landlords in Chicago.
God, everything was against him in Chicago, that poor guy. Everything, really.
Yeah.
Don't do business in far left cities. It's too expensive, and they don't want you to succeed.
Well, that's the thing. It introduces a lot of risk. And what basically I'm realizing Jen is head of risk reduction in addition to other things. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of neat to think about that. Our team collectively is very good at helping our colleagues, these entrepreneurs, really minimize risk.
Right. Yep.
Which is pretty cool. I never really thought about it like that before.
Yep.
That is actually the whole purpose of a franchise. What you're saying is, I believe I'll be able to solve someone else's problem so well that they'll pay me for it, and I'll be able to do that enough time so that I can make more money than I'm spending. And if you've never done that before, it seems pretty straightforward. And then Ben and I have probably done 10 companies together.
At least at this point.
And it's, I've been at this for a decade now, and I've had one moderate success. Let's call it a mild success. I had a lot of success in corporate, but corporate's, it's training wheels. That's not entrepreneurship. And then this business is going well, but a decade of trial and error and getting things wrong. So, and then I believe, I don't want to misquote, but the franchise stats, when you do a franchise instead of doing your own, are much more palatable. Because if you actually look at the statistics, deciding to be an entrepreneur and open a business is stupid. You may as well buy a lotto ticket, because what you're saying is, the world is the way it is right now, and there's a particular domain where I know better. And I know better to the extent that if I bring this new thing to market, it's going to be better than what else is out there, and people are going to divert their funds to this new idea instead of what they were doing before, if anything.
Yep.
And people are going to know that I exist.
Which you could build the most amazing software, as Ben has on multiple occasions. Ben has apps that have millions of downloads and apps that Jiffy's has probably 1,000. It's a great app.
75, 76 downloads.
It's a really good app, but nobody knows about it.
Yeah, my app Oiled had like 8 downloads. Right. It's one of my favorite apps.
That was a great app. But
nobody knows.
Nobody cares because nobody knows.
Yeah.
And if you get everything right and you don't get the communication right and the marketing right, then you are screwed. So ultimately, what a franchise is supposed to do is take a proven business model and allow other people to buy it so they can de-risk entrepreneurship, have the freedom of owning a business without the risk. The trouble, though, comes with everything else that's happening to business across the world, which is people that want to make money purchase companies that sell franchises, and then they try to squeeze as much value out of it as possible. And they look at franchisees as customers. They look at franchisees as revenue sources, and they are, but that is short-term thinking. Short-term thinking is, I want to charge this person the franchise fee. Then I want to charge them royalties. Then when they buy equipment, they're going to buy it from us, and then we're going to mark it up. And then when they buy this and they buy that, we're going to mark it up, and we're going to charge them for these services, and we're going to do 4x what it actually costs us. And they're looking at their franchisees as a way to earn more money. And we explicitly don't do that wherever possible, because we want our franchisees spending as little money as possible so they can make as much profit as possible, so they can be viable for as long as possible. And these are 10-year agreements, and by the end of the 10 years, we want their payback period to have been fast and their profitability over time to have been high, and for them to be anxious to renew to do it for another 10 years. We're not interested in selling 100 franchises, open in 15, having 7 of them fail, and then trying to sell this thing to private equity because look how many franchises we sold, right? It's the total opposite. So franchising is great conceptually, but just be careful who's behind the scenes. And if there are not people with values and principles and business ethics behind the scenes, then you'll likely be dealing with Comcast as the people that get to decide whether or not your entrepreneurial endeavor is profitable or not.
Yeah, find out you just wrote a check to a bureaucracy.
Right.
Who has strict policies and nobody to talk to.
Right. In fact, Andrew Lewis, our Indianapolis guy, called me the other day, and then I conversed with Jen, and we were talking. He emailed us and asked about some conflict of interest stuff, and he and I had an agreement about his current business and when that's going to wind down. And he said, hey, I know we agreed on this date, and that's the letter of the agreement, so if you want, I'll continue to do that, but I just wanted to mention the situation has changed or whatever. And I said, well, first of all, if I ever say we need to do this because that's what we agreed to with no discussion, we've failed. The whole goal of what we're trying to do here is do things that make sense. So contracts are cool, but contracts are only there if the relationship deteriorates and we no longer want what's best for each other, which I hope never occurs. And we don't even feel that way anyways of people that don't work out. People just don't work out. Obviously, the other side can sometimes get frustrated. So we're trying to do things. We're trying to do things the right way. Is kind of the theme, and Jen is well, actually, Luke is the first proof of that, because Luke is a franchise owner, and he's the guy that these prospects talk to, and Luke just shoots them straight. I just opened my gym. This is how it's going. These are my thoughts on the whole deal. Do your diligence. Put together your pro forma. We'll go from there, and then they get passed over to Jen. And Jen is not letting anybody fuck with the franchise owners. Jen will go to battle. Jen will lose sleep. Jen will escalate to CEOs. Jen will You name it.
Companies to do their jobs for them.
Yeah. How many companies have you started so far to provide services to the franchisees? Because not because you want to make money, but because the people that are out there that offer the services don't actually offer the services. Like Jen's been through 2 or 3 sign vendors now, and the last one we pick is might be the worst company I've ever interacted with, including companies from other parts of the world that are developing. Might be the worst company I've ever interacted with. And these are the guys that do Starbucks. They do Starbucks storefront signs.
Blows me away.
Yeah.
Poison in their system.
They absolutely do not give a damn. They absolutely have no capability. And so what is it? Good, fast, cheap? Which one are you? Well, none.
Not a single one. Dishonest, unethical, slow.
Yeah.
And expensive.
Mistake-ridden.
Yeah. The next company is probably signage, but for now it's construction and furnishings, fixtures.
Furniture, fixtures, equipment.
Can't even say it anymore.
FF&E.
Yeah.
Jen's husband, Zach, builds our furniture out of his garage because the company that designed the furniture in Long Beach gave us a quote that was just unbelievable. I mean, 7 times more than what Zach charges to build it by hand.
Yeah, and then a super long lead time. And
and that was a fraction of the cost that these commercial equipment manufacturers wanted to charge. I cannot believe what these people try to get away with. A wooden bench that should be, what's a wooden bench cost? They're still expensive, like a lobby bench. What's the rough cost on that?
It's $975.
$975. So let's say the designers wanted to charge us $7,000, and then for a bench, right? It's like, what? So we're not going to tolerate that, and we're not going to tolerate general contractors just being like, an extra $10,000 there, and
Oh my God.
Well, and then Zach's actually gone out to do some of the installs himself. Right?
Yeah. So
Because Jen cares so much, she'll just be like, husband, please
drive a trailer to Oregon.
I've sent my husband in a snowstorm to Oregon to build the platforms and put the furniture together because I didn't really trust the contractor, which turns out was a good instinct because it didn't go well. But yeah, just whatever it takes. Honestly, whatever it takes. I have a friend, Burke, who has driven from Idaho to Chicago and Columbus to install their vinyl because I would not accept the prices of the vinyl installation that I was receiving. Like it's highway robbery.
This is for the wall art. So if you guys look at any of our websites, you'll see how the gyms are dressed. The wall arts are just vinyl stickers, right? You got to print the vinyl sticker, then have a professional install them. And first of all, tell us a story about the level and on the wall art, and then tell us how much Chicago wanted to install wall art.
Yeah, apparently most installers don't bring things to tell them if something's level. They put it on the wall. They just kind of guess.
For real?
And then although my
I shouldn't be surprised at this point, but that's insane.
Apparently my instructions that are hyper specific, either people don't read or they misconstrue something.
They absolutely don't read your instructions.
I hope we can put an image up on the screen right now of a page from one of Jen's instruction sheets. Because it's the most detailed, accurate thing. There's no way that if you work in an industry that's correlated or just anywhere on planet Earth as a human being, and you read these instructions, that you can misunderstand or implement them incorrectly.
Yeah.
But then they still do.
Yeah.
Let me interrupt you guys real quick. So let's not talk to them for a minute. Let's talk normal people to normal people. 2 engineers sitting here talking about, the documentation was so clear, and I just don't understand why it wasn't done correctly when you shouldn't be surprised at all. Nobody reads. Nobody cares. They're like, oh, got some stickers, got a wall. I can put stickers on a wall.
Yeah, I've been to IKEA before. I know how to put stuff together.
They read, but usually what they want to interpret from it, they interpret. So, for example, I have the vinyl art for the graphics. It's 4 5/8 of an inch from the floor to the bottom of the graphic. There's a visual image of that measurement. There's the written measurement, and oftentimes it will be installed 4 5/8 of an inch above the baseboard. Like, how did that instruction go from floor to baseboard?
And your graphic, I've seen your graphic. It indicates, don't do this above the baseboard. Do it above the floor.
Yep.
But they
There's
still
an
do
asterisk. Don't. So anyway, I've brought Burke in for the last few installations, and not only because I know it's going to get done correctly because he brings in a level and is very precise on where it's going to go, but also because he's not trying to rip our franchise owners off. The quote that we got in Chicago for vinyl installation was $10,000. to put 10 stickers on the wall, and then a couple. No, that's just installation. $10,000.
Just to put them up?
Just to put them up. It's an 8-hour job.
Was it union?
In Chicago, probably.
Yeah.
But even Boise, actually. Our sign vendor actually ended up flying out to Boise to do the install because he couldn't get a price lower than $3,500 for an 8-hour job. And he could fly out and do it for cheaper and spend the night in Boise. So there's just so many scenarios like that.
I should start a label installation business or something.
Seriously.
Seems really lucrative.
Yeah.
I don't want to start any more businesses at the moment, but if you guys have time and are interested, knock yourselves out.
It's just unfortunate because there's almost every situation that the franchise owners are in with spending money, somebody wants to take advantage of them. And it's unacceptable. And so I'm particular, and when a franchise owner gets a quote from a contractor, a quote from a sign company or whatever, either I'm looking through it in detail or now our construction team's looking through it in detail to go through the fine print and say, you doubled up on that, that's not necessary or whatever. So for example, the Tulsa is being built right now, and our construction manager, Dana, who's also a general contractor and built out Starting Strength Boise, so he knows how these jobs work, also built out Starting Strength Columbus. He was going through their bid line by line. They duplicated like 6 things. That bid, by the time he leveled it, and it wasn't even negotiating price down or anything, just by the time he took out all the mistakes, it was $45,000 off the bid. That most
wow.
Probably 90% of franchise owners, anybody that hasn't been in the construction industry to understand what this means, would have paid that price. And it's like that, it just breaks my brain, and it actually pisses me off. It's totally fraudulent.
Well, I like to think of it, maybe, which is what makes me really pissed off also, is how long does it take an entrepreneur with a brand new business to make $45,000 of profit after taxes clear in their bank account that they get to keep and hold on to?
After
how long does that take?
Yeah.
Totally.
So long.
Right.
Yep. And that's the thing is I'm probably making this too personal, but with those scenarios, especially with that price difference, it feels like these people are trying to make our franchise owners fail.
Right.
Yeah.
At every corner, they're just like, oh, here's an extra 10 grand here, here's an extra 20 grand here, here's whatever. And it's like, do you understand, to your point, what it takes to earn that much money once you're open for business? The amount of effort and time it takes to get to that profitability, that's insane. So it's not acceptable to be spending extra here, extra there. So the goal of our team is just we're going to find all the ways that people are trying to screw you, and we're going to talk them down and get the price to what's reasonable. Yep. Usually that works.
Yeah. And it's not malicious, just in the way that it's not malicious when the government harms people. They just don't care.
Yeah.
They're just totally self-interested.
Yeah. I mean, people, they're in business too. They're trying to make whatever they can. Sometimes it feels a little bit malicious, but
it does, yeah. Especially that sign vendor. Do you want to tell the story about our payment processor and because it doesn't take much to get Ben upset.
Oh man!
But if you make false claims about security, IT security, Ben's not happy. So hit us with it.
Oh man, that's okay. You might as well pour more whiskey. Yeah. Okay. So the credit card, when you swipe a credit card or when you pay for something with a credit card, by the time that transaction hits Visa's network or MasterCard's network, there have been a few parties involved in the approval process and in the rails that operate these credit card networks. And so these companies that are involved that proxy these transactions and resell stuff for Visa, and then in turn their stuff gets resold, they're effectively they're selling a commodity, and it's a commodity with an adjustable rate, because sometimes Visa will slightly adjust the rates for certain cards from certain banks or something. And so the credit card processing company that we use, we're required to use because our membership management software only works with them. And they require us to do an annual PCI compliance form to basically legally state that we're being careful with your credit card information. And due to the wonders of technology, and I'm not even sure if I believe this to be true yet, they claimed that they emailed like 8 of our gyms to say, hey, you're out of compliance. And so that email didn't go through, or it was never sent. And instead they followed it up with an email pitching us on a scam that they call a security bundle, saying that if we pay $30 a month, then they'll protect all of our computers, and they will further protect your credit card data, which is already maximally protected. And they'll do this whole host of things. They had like 8 bullet points, which were all lies. And then they said, oh, by the way, we've already opted you into it. And unless you call this number and press this option and wait on hold to opt out, then we're going to be charging you $30 a month.
The poor guy that you had to talk to on the phone, because Ben did IT security for the NSA, for the F-18 program?
There was different. I worked with the F-18 program. I worked with
separately with NSA.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the NSA doesn't deal with airplanes, but government agencies in defense and IT security. And then also, you ran, I think, the world's first IP messaging-based peer-to-peer money transfer system. You created that in Indonesia for BlackBerry. Before iMessage existed, there was BBM, BlackBerry Messenger, which is kind of like the first phone-to-phone internet protocol messaging service. And so you could send money back in 2011 from your BlackBerry to another BlackBerry in Indonesia, and that was kind of a world's first thing. So Ben knows a little bit about the back end of credit card processing and a little bit about IT security. So the sales guy on the phone that was trying to convince Ben that, yes, this is a legit IT bundle and you need this extra security.
Well, that's the thing. So I emailed back and I was very upset. And I forwarded a screenshot of the scam offer thing, forcing us to pay for a scam from a company that we're supposed to be in business with. We have agreements together that we're going to try to conduct profitable business together and not just steal from each other, anyways, I forwarded it off to our account rep, and then I get a phone call from a guy who was claiming to know what he was talking about, and I just called him out on it being a scam, and he was just lying to me and telling me that this is a cost recovery effort, and that it's for our best interests, and he would not admit that they're just trying to make $30 a month.
And he may not know the difference. He may not think that it's legit, because a lot of sales guys in the technical world don't know the details of what they're actually selling, and they're convinced that it does something that it doesn't. But either way, it's unacceptable.
So then I started running him through the bullet points that were listed and telling him why each of them were lies. And then he tried to sell it to me again. He was like, well, but you guys, aren't you worried about, since COVID-19, ransomware is at all new highs? And I said, please stop, dude. I'm not trying to be an arrogant prick, but you're speaking to an expert on the topic and you don't even know the words you're saying. You don't even know what they mean. Because all you want to do is make $30 a month.
You must get a good spiff.
From 8 gyms.
Yeah.
And now all of our gym owners are pissed.
Yeah.
Or the ones that were involved are actually pissed. The other ones are just laughing on the sidelines. But It's so crazy that businesses, somebody chose to make that decision to try to steal $30 a month from people that weren't paying attention.
Opt in. Hey, customer, I'm going to start charging more money per month. Didn't send you certified mail, just an email.
People that are trying to screw over small business owners, how many small business owners or any business owners have time to go through their whole inbox every day?
Right, and if they're like, $30 a month, and if it's going to protect us, then we can afford $30 a month.
It says here that we're at risk of being hacked,
right?
And they're going to protect stuff that actually, none of those words actually equate or mean anything when they're put together in the same sentence.
They don't know any better.
Yeah, fear is a popular or a powerful way to sell, for sure.
But yeah, we basically all of us spend a lot of time catching our vendors trying to rip us off all the damn time.
And then when we find people that, like Rip and Steph, that actually want what's best for you, and it's like when you go to dinner with friends. No one's squabbling over oh, well, actually, you had 2 pieces of that and I only had 1, so we're no, I got it, and that's kind of the level of generosity you want in a business relationship.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we have to settle for less all the time. And the worst thing about this business is dealing with people outside of Starting Strength, because the franchise owners and all the vendors and all the people that we hire that come from Starting Strength, they are driven by a purpose because this has changed their life in such a positive way, and they're so excited and committed to bringing it to more people that it drives their behavior. And then they're just kind of, in general, lovely, smart, analytical people in general. And I really enjoy working with people that give a damn and are capable. And that is in short supply nowadays. It really is the hardest part of the job. I mean, Jen and people on Jen's team like Phoebe have to take the brunt of dealing with external parties. I deal with almost all internal parties. So my day is a lot better than Jen's, unfortunately. But hopefully that'll change soon, especially as your team expands.
Hopefully.
But let's get back on the timeline. So where were we? We talked about the LOI. We talked a little bit about construction standards. So what happens next?
Yeah, once you start the lease negotiation process, we've got a whole team of people that start the sort of behind the scenes work. So sometimes a site survey, depending on the situation, and then a floor plan. So we figure out how many platforms you can fit in the space, and then just kind of get all the particulars situated in the floor plan. Send that to our architect, our national architect, and he takes it from there and creates what's called a construction document packet that's put together for the city for permitting. So start lease negotiations on average 8 to 10 weeks for lease negotiations. So in that time is kind of our opportunity to really gain some time. Oftentimes, especially lately, the terms of the lease are, as soon as you sign that lease, basically your rent starts ticking. Your free rent period starts ticking. So our goal is to get as much done in this lease negotiation process so that by the time you sign your lease, you can submit everything for permitting, you can really hit the ground running, so you can have as much free rent as possible. So so construction documents start happening, signage package gets put together, and your ordering starts for all the big, long lead time stuff. So rubber floor and equipment, furniture, all that stuff. So especially lately, the lead times have gotten longer and longer. So we try to kind of start the process as quick and as early as possible. So by the time your lease is done, like I said, I don't know, 8 to 12 weeks. One of the leases we had to go through was 7 months, but that's an extreme end. As soon as your lease is final, submit your construction documents to your landlord to review. They kind of look big picture stuff, just making sure any, things like security cameras on the outside of the building, they say yay or nay, or sometimes they care about the concrete slab and the particulars of repouring the concrete slab and the PSI and all this stuff. But usually it's just big picture review. They sign off on it, send it to the city for permitting, and then send your some or all of your permanent signage for permitting, at least your storefront sign for permitting. So start that process. Nowadays, permitting is totally backlogged. So what used to take, in Boise as an example, maybe 1 week to get your permits took, I think, 8 weeks to get the permits.
Where?
In Boise.
Oh, right.
And then in our Orlando gym is actually in Maitland, Florida, just on the border of Orlando. For many reasons, that permitting, I think, took 5 months. So kind of start the permitting process and then start the general contractor interview and selection process. And our construction team, Dana, who I mentioned before, the construction manager, is the one that's in charge of finding general contractors, interviewing them, and kind of getting a list together to present to the franchise owner that said, okay, here's the people that I vetted. Here's who I recommend you select. Who do you want to go with? They select, and then they start the process of finalizing the bid and, getting all the contract stuff figured out. Ideally, once your permits are in hand from the city for both construction documents and signage, then the project starts. So you start demolition, start building out the space. On average, it takes 8 weeks to construct one of our gyms. It's gone as quick as 4 weeks and as long as 13 weeks, but on average it's about 8. So it's once construction starts, it's like go, go, go. So we have Phoebe who's managing all the orders for everything the general contractor installs in an effort to make sure that the timelines are achieved, make sure that the contractor isn't marking up your finishes by sometimes 500%. and just making sure that the specification is met. So they're not changing our lighting package or changing our rubber floor package or whatever. So Phoebe manages all that ordering. I can go on and on about all the things that have been changed, and this is a surprise. Like, oops, we didn't order on time. Now we have these options.
Give us a couple fun examples of changes that were made unilaterally.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess most recently, well, now that Phoebe's taken it over, less about what's been changed and more about what contractors are trying to charge for supplying things like a lighting package. So our lighting package, buy it directly from the vendor, is anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000 depending on the size of your gym and how many lights you need.
And it's damn good.
It's
designed by this fella right here, the dude himself.
Yep. So it's a relatively
The lights abide.
it's a relatively inexpensive lighting package. It's a great lighting package, and it's simple. It's a bunch of LEDs, so they'll last a long time. The contractor who's currently doing Tulsa accidentally put the lighting package in their bid and marked it up to $17,000. So
Just a whoopsie doopsie. I mean,
just-
sometimes that happens. Like, I'm typing invoices sometimes, and I just go, "Oh God!" and I type out a whole.
add an extra one in the beginning. Yeah.
It's like, wow, and then I don't notice it happen, and I just keep going.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea of how accurate GC's bidding is, they're like,
Yeah, take a close look.
Even when, again, you spend a lot of time documenting and making sure that you're listing out everything that the general contractors are going to supply and that the owner's going to supply, and they still goof.
You know what I think they do? I think they have templates that they just copy paste
They must.
or something. Like I just,
Yeah, especially the duplicates. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think. I mean, there's been all kinds of things that the general contractors sort of made decisions on without confirming that that's what needed to be installed. Chicago, for example, anytime there's a threshold between floors, you want to install a floor transition. And in the Chicago's case, apparently the floor transition that we supply did not work. And rather than the contractor calling up the construction manager who knows what an alternative would be, they just decided to install their own floor transition, which ended up being a strip of rubber floor that was just like cut crooked, and they just sort of like filled in the gap between the higher floor and the lower floor, and they just hoped for the best, and then they had to modify the baseboard and do a bunch of funky stuff with the baseboard. And it just would have been really simple with just a quick phone call, like, hey, do you have another transition you can send me? This one doesn't work. So now they have to go back and rip up the floor and fix it because it looks horrible.
but not at their expense, because I've noticed lately when GCs make a mistake, they then add the dollar amount to fix the mistake to the invoice.
Yep.
yeah, they're like, well, you'll still pay for it, so
Yeah.
Could you imagine? How is this? How is this possible?
Yeah. They're like, well, that's going to be a change order. It's like, well, you didn't follow the spec. Well, there's lots of specs written in your construction documents. If you expect us to follow all of these, that's absurd.
You wanted me to read?
listen, there's a percentage of things that we're just going to make the call on,
Yeah.
okay, whether you like it or not.
They actually get really angry when you're like, well, if you refer to sheet 7.0, whatever, this note, they're like, well, that's a generic note. That doesn't apply here. Like, no, it does.
It's specific if it means you would have done the right thing.
Yeah, like, I don't know, making sure the concrete floor doesn't have a bunch of high spots and low spots. Leveling it because you're putting platforms on the floor and you don't want to lift on uneven platforms. Anyway.
Oh, the level again. Shit, the level. Okay, got it.
That's that tool I keep thinking I need.
Yeah. I don't know why, but the floor transition specifically make me so angry. When I see an incorrect floor transition, I just start to cuss and I get very upset.
That's amazing.
Lots of things about GC's work upsets me. When there are gaps between doors and door frames, when there are discolored electrical panel covers on the wall that don't match our spec, when there are electrical outlets on the wall when Jen specified no electrical outlets and the GC goes, probably need some. I'll throw a couple in.
Yeah, this can't be right.
What does that woman know?
This 400,000 page technical specification clearly didn't consider everything. I'll make a couple of
I've
modifications.
been doing this a long time.
I literally specified the finish on the hinges on the doors. So that, it's It's all there. But
Pretty specific.
anyway, so
Not complicated to detail.
Plus, the guy that did the floor transition with the crooked stuff that he filled in stood up at the end of the day and was like, "Yeah,
I'm happy with that.
that's all right.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, it's good.
Let's move on.
I'm not
It'll
even going to
pass
tell
code.
anybody that it's all jacked up.
yeah, let's just hope nobody notices.
That's good. Nobody will ask about that.
The way we can tell if a general contractor has read the guide, and maybe part of their interview process should be some kind of a thing where in the middle of a detailed email it says reply with the word belly button, or if you read this far, and if no one says belly button, no one gets hired. Because the way we can tell if a GC followed the guide or not was they will have no base plate behind the Nest thermostat.
That's right.
So if you see a gym that has a base plate behind the Nest thermostat, that fucking general contractor did not read the technical guidelines. And although that's not a giant deal, everything's important. All those little design specifications add up to an overall theme and a vibe and an aesthetic that we're going for. And unfortunately, that's not negotiable. And it's a franchise, and it's supposed to be kind of standard. And eventually, people will start to treat us like McDonald's. But at the moment, they're like, I think I'll make the call on this one.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's been the challenge with our model in a way, and like our footprint. So because we have such small gyms, we're kind of limited in our general contractor selection. A lot of general contractors aren't interested in doing a $150,000 job, especially when the job is truly just labor,
right?
Because we're supplying everything. So we kind of have, especially now with how much construction is going on, we have kind of slim pickings. So we try to do the best we can and pick the people that we feel are best given the options. But it definitely has proven to be challenging. That in addition to brokers, real estate brokers.
Yep.
So our real estate brokers get paid on price per square foot. They get paid on the deal. So if the deal is a 10-year deal, but it's $30 a square foot and it's a 1,200 square foot gym, it's not that lucrative for people. So they just don't care.
If you're watching this and you're like, I'm a good whatever that we mentioned that we're complaining about, and you're a good person and you like to do right by people and you're a Starting Strength fan, we have work for you. info@startingstrengthgyms.com. Email us.
Right, with belly button.
Put belly button in the email, otherwise you're not getting a reply.
I'll set up the filter myself, straight to the trash can. No belly button.
IT policy.
One of the things that I've found about small business that's, for me, was kind of a surprise that maybe I just didn't know before over time, is that one of the reasons that small business is hard is because you can't afford the people to know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And you can't afford the people with experience, because all those people with experience, all those people that know what they're doing, have really high-end clients, or they have jobs, or they're busy, because they're good.
Yep.
And so you're left with literally the scraps.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you have a proxy with domain expertise in every single one of the areas necessary to function as a business to help you sort through the scraps, then you are just screwed, man. Like, I don't know how anybody does it.
Yeah, so we just have to keep finding the people that give a damn, and the people with a bunch of skills, because take a guy like Nick Delgadillo. I mean, shit, Nick is a world-class coach. He's a legitimate videographer, legitimate photographer, video editor, photo editor, shooting instructor, blah, 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 blah.
Business operator, logistics operator, technical operator.
So you give me a guy like Nick, and that's why he's a shareholder. It's us three plus Nick plus Rip and Steph, so the six of us. And just between those six people, the amount of experience that we've had and the amount that we care and all that kind of added together. I mean, just the three of us, we have such an interesting dynamic, because these two are engineers. Jen is an engineer in the offline world. Ben is an engineer in the digital world. And the two intersect, obviously. So there's a bunch of crossover, and they work together on a bunch of construction stuff. And then my role is basically risk assessment. So idea or vision, assess the risk, assemble the team, figure out how the team's going to execute, set up processes, set up measurements, and then get funding, move forward, make sure everyone's happy, make sure it's working. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic that we have between the three of us, and you layer on minds like fucking Steph Bradford, who's probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. Smarter than Rip, by the way, which she admits and Rip admits, and we all now know.
We can say it, since they say it.
And you've seen Rip's podcast. That guy's got a mind where he just so happened to get into barbells. But you could take that guy and attach him to any category. And if he spent a 30-year career on figuring things out and looking at the first principles, he would turn any category on its head and find something that no one else found throughout history that's meaningful and important and game-changing. And then you got a guy like Nick. So us 6, and then the people that have joined us since the inception to round out our skill set. Lacey and Luke and Phoebe and Dana and Adam and Becky, and we just have a kick-ass team. And then you couple that.
Courtney just
joined the team. I'm sure I forgot someone. Kathy Delgadillo. Don't get upset if I forgot. There's a lot of names now.
Kathy's a purple belt, dude. She's really accurate.
That's a good point. Yeah. So it's just really nice to have that level of talent, and it is frustrating. It is frustrating. And when you combine that all with the quality of people that we have, as far as franchise owners are concerned, then it makes all this stuff kind of less important, because basically you have to get jumped into the gang. And getting jumped into the gang means you've got to deal with the fucking government, general contractors, and landlords. And if you can do all those 3 things and make it through to opening, then you get the privilege of being waterboarded until you're cash flow positive. Because unless you're wealthy, that's what business feels like. Yeah. It's financial waterboarding. Yeah. So if you're betting big on a new gym, and it's a lot of your capital or all of your capital, and you're going for it, every day that passes before you're cash flow positive is a harrowing experience. It's not good for you. And all of that is terrible. I don't recommend it. Except I do recommend it, because if you can get through all that shit, owning a starting strength gym is pretty cool. Yeah. It's not that hard. Yeah. We set up all the systems and processes, so as many things are as automated as possible. The overhead is minimal. You can do most things remotely. It's just about people. Mm-hmm. If you love people, if you love good people, above average intelligence, people that invest in the future, the people that come to our gyms, and you did a good job of selecting your coaching staff, your day-to-day job is making sure your coaches are happy and having a good time and successful, so that they can ensure that the members are happy and having a good time and are successful. And it's not that hard. But all the stuff before that is way harder than it should be. Mm-hmm. It's actually disappointing how difficult and ridiculous and expensive it is. But I'm glad, and the franchise owners are glad, that people like you are around to make sure they're not getting taken advantage of. You have probably saved, I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Over $500,000, maybe up to $1 million in potentially fraudulent invoicing up till now. Who knows, right? Yeah. But way more than it should be.
And the impact that the crappy construction has on the long-term viability of the business's ability just to keep the doors open.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
When when Brent's gym had those concrete problems, and they had to take everything out of the new gym that just got built, which was the second gym, and to redo the concrete.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's stuff that franchise owners, especially a new business owner, they don't want to deal with that stuff. Yep. That's damaging. You need to be spending your time on sales, marketing, talking to members, running your business. So it's super distracting. It's unfortunate.
Your gym's a factory, and each platform is a machine in your factory. And if the machine is off or the factory is off, then you're in big trouble, because you can't generate revenue, and the expenses don't stop, as we learned during COVID.
Yep.
Right?
It is, out of all the crap, I always try to be optimistic too. And it's a good point. Like you're looking at the optimistic side of it and the positive side. And the really positive side is experiencing all the crap and all the terrible nature of people and the ways that they're willing to treat others and treat entrepreneurs or give as much of a shit as we might expect them to. It makes recognizing the people that do a really good job all the better.
Yep.
And yeah, our team is really fantastic. I've been around really talented people. I've been super fortunate to be around people who just excel, and throughout different parts of my career. And man, our team here is firstly, the only team that 100% gives a shit. Across the board with zero exceptions. 100% gives a shit all the time by default, no matter what.
Yep.
And knows how to actually do it.
Yep.
It's really amazing. And it's very humbling to that the Asgard team, Mark Ripito and Steph Bradford and Nick Delgadillo, decided to also take the risk on us as business partners, because they're a really fantastic group of people. And damn, it's rad to bring all the force that we have now on this team collectively to market is a very special thing. So that's why we get so pissed off when people try to mess with our colleagues. And
Things are hard enough. We don't need you trying to set up landmines for us. Things are difficult enough.
Yeah.
And really, the pre-opening process shouldn't be this hard. It really shouldn't be. It's ridiculous that it is. But it is worth it. And stress recovery adaptation applies to the psychological as well as the physical.
Yeah.
And you will get your MBA in 9 months when you open a starting strength gym, because you're going to learn a lot about business, and you're going to learn a lot about human nature, and you're going to learn a lot about incentives and the way things really work. Because Jen, maybe you can talk to us about this for a minute, because I believe that if you've never done business, there's a degree of naivety about your conception of the way the world works.
100%.
Much in the same way that once you start to learn about starting strength and how this method that is basically counter to everything you learned about pop culture's conception of fitness, once you understand that starting strength is correct and it's the opposite of what the common understanding is, that can be eye-opening in itself. But when you actually learn how people behave, what they say versus what they do, the way business interactions work, the way incentives work, how complicated things are behind the scenes, I think that's a unbelievably useful process to go through to mature as an adult. And I think it makes you a better spouse. I think it makes you a better parent. I think it is, I would love to hear your thoughts on it, because you were an engineer and you knew how the specific details in your domain worked, but you were completely unclear about how business worked in general. And you got a very rapid education, and you had your eyes opened probably faster and more than you wanted them to be.
We're here to show for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's naive is a good word, because most people don't have the exposure to kind of what we're seeing now. In my previous world, it was, you have this budget, there's this thing that you need to achieve by this time, do that. But how to get that budget, how to have those conversations, how to determine even what money you should be spending, all that was never part of that conversation. So I had no idea how any of that worked. So then doing a complete 180 and being exposed to the business realm, it's changed almost all of my perspectives, and my understanding of how I thought the world worked and how I thought business worked. And it's a little frustrating, especially with COVID and trying to figure out how to operate a business when you're just unsure about if people are even going to come into the gym, if people, if the government's going to shut you down, if you're, what's tomorrow going to bring? You just wake up and it's a total crapshoot. But yeah, and I don't know. This, back to your point about the stress recovery adaptation cycle, that's never really been a thing in my life prior to being now a business owner and being in this realm. It just wasn't a perspective that I had. It was just like, you come to work, you do your thing, you leave. With this, it's you pour your heart and soul into a business to try to get it to be successful and to bring value to people. And it may succeed, it may not succeed, but you work as hard as you can and try to get past all the barriers, and you don't take a day off. And you just work and work and work and learn and learn and learn and iterate until you figure it out. And figuring it out might be success, or it might be, I'm actually not cut out for this. This isn't for me, because it's really, really stressful.
It is very stressful. It is stressful, and affords you a degree of freedom that you can't get elsewhere. So you have to decide, right? Are you willing to put yourself through that? Is it worth it for you to take a risk. Because for my wife, Kathy, for example, it's not. She's always going to be W-2. She could probably make $1 million a year doing what she does, turning $1 into $7 as a digital marketer. But she makes great money with her company. It's significantly less than that, but it's consistent and it's stable, and that matches her risk profile. But for those of you that don't want a boss, that want to define your own hours, and you want to blaze your own trail, then there's entrepreneurship, which I don't recommend it. And then there's and then there's franchise ownership, which is kind of entrepreneurship light, which is good. Yes. In ways that people don't fully understand until they're in it. And if you get a good franchisor, you may not ever understand how good you have it.
Absolutely.
You may not ever understand how good you have it, because I know a few people that own franchise companies that do not give a shit about their franchisees. And it shows in everything they do.
Watch the John Oliver special on Subway. That's an example.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I don't watch John Oliver.
Well, yeah.
That fella is
His Subway special was good.
yeah, he's a propagandist.
It's just an example of like how bad a franchise company can screw their people over, because they're really just incentivized to make money.
They're the biggest in the world, so it makes perfect sense. They're everywhere. Although the mustard in Australia is different than the mustard in the U.S., which I don't agree with. But yeah, they don't have yellow mustard in Australia.
What do you have? What do you do?
It's some like weird Australian. I don't know. The Australians fuck everything up. They've got what's that salty spread they put on Vegemite yeah, that's just really bad. They just decided that yellow mustard is too delicious, so they opted for something else. So
Don't grow mustards.
there are boats. So what did we miss in the process? Did we go through everything? We went through LOI.
Yeah, I guess the final part really is really the fun part, I think, which you finally established pre-sales. You start construction. Now you know when you're going to open, generally. And then Ben and Lacey and a few others get involved. And now you start the process of selling memberships before you open, which is fun. So you're now promoting this to everybody that's been waiting for a gym in whatever market you're in. And with Ben's fancy systems, people just go online and they click sign up, and now you're making money. And you open a gym with however many members, and the word spreads, and now you're a business owner. So,
Good luck.
Yeah.
Business owner with business coaches and help at every level.
Yep.
And other franchisees. I mean, every time I go into Slack, which is our team communication tool, there's not every time, but quite often there's a question, and then someone like JD will chime in. JD is the guy that owns Houston, and just lay it out because our position is theoretical. Jen's is more experience-based because she's been running Austin for a long time. But it's better. I'd rather have JD answer than me, because I'm the one that created everything as far as the concept and the processes and the guides and all this stuff, at least at the beginning. You guys then made it all better. But he's the one that actually took it and implemented it and refined it and knows how it works in real life. Yeah. So it's nice to have that support group, and then also the franchise team helping people out.
Yep. Yeah, our franchise owners, I mean, anytime a franchise owner asks me a question, I'm like, yeah, I can help you with that answer, but also please talk to whatever the scenario is, talk to this person and this person, because they're also experts and they have their own perspective. Mm-hmm. And this is a team of people that also want each other to succeed, because collectively we all succeed together. And it seems like everybody sees that. The
bigger this brand grows, and this is why people help each other out when a member visits from another city. They'd usually just give the member a freebie to come visit. And there's just a lot of goodwill, and it's cool when we have these owners retreats and coaches conferences to everyone to hang out, and there's no shitty competition or one-upping. It's our group, it's our people. Yep. And it's taken me until my late 30s to find my people, but I finally found my people. This is where I belong, which is a nice feeling.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. And it's the group, like you mentioned in the beginning, about how people split a bill. Like our entire extended family with the franchise team, everybody will just split the bill the easy way, because they know we're all going to get each other back next time.
Very
all
generous.
evens out. Yeah.
So what else, Jen? Have we gone through everything pre-opening that you want to talk about?
That's pretty much it. I mean, I'm less involved in this side of things, but during pre-sales is kind of when Nick really starts to step in, and everyone starts to finalize their team, figure out who's coming on and who's going to be the coach, and what they're going to do for their operations and things. And really.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We forgot to mention Ina. Ina's one of the people that deserves a hell of a lot of credit. Speaking of recruiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And with all of Ina's efforts, now finally, like the franchise owner, has selected their team based on people that she's sent them, and they start to figure out how they're going to run the gym and to actually finally bring Starting Strength to market. So that's the bulk of it. And then operations are a much simpler process than pre-opening. Pre-opening is a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But once you get going, it's fairly straightforward, like you said.
Cool. Ben, anything else you want to talk about?
Well, that just, I think, reflects on the neat part about us having done, or at least Ray and I having opened up businesses before now. Jen's business experience is, the vision for this thing is so that once the bloody gym opens, that it's easy to run.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that's nice. I love simplifying things and like taking out stuff and having processes that are as simple as possible that don't need instruction manuals. And man, these gyms operate really well, as far as I can tell.
Yeah,
Very
weird.
smoothly.
That's how we designed it, and that's how it's actually working, which is pretty unusual. So
that's very weird.
hallelujah. By the way, Bree, throw a little tag up at the top to link to Ben's episode on tech, so people that are watching this can see Ben elaborate on that whole concept, because he went into explicit detail about, although he's the guy that runs technology, he actually wants as few things with internet connections and microchips as possible in the gym, because that's fewer things to fail and fewer things to support.
Yeah, I want the gym to be as little internet connected as possible.
Even though most people are like, why don't you connect your key card to internet? Why don't you connect this internet? Why don't you complicate stuff? Like, no.
For a bunch of very good reasons, and we can talk about them if you want, but either way, we're not budging. Yeah. That's probably a good place to end. That was fun. There's a lot more we can talk about. I mean, we could do 50 of these episodes and have a lot of cool content, but we'll have to get Jen drunk again. I was thinking we would either do this episode or we would talk about kind of the startup story and how Jen moved down from Alaska and we all moved into a big house and started this company together. And there's a lot of fun and stress and nonsense and kind of some cool stories that happened along the way. So, but I thought this episode would be more useful, and it answers a lot of questions that a lot of prospective franchisees ask. So, if you want to see the background about kind of how we started this thing, we can do another one and have this conversation. Just comment below, and if someone's already commented, just give it a like, and I'll take a peek. And if you guys want to see it, for all 5 of you that have made it this far in the episode, if you guys want to see that, let us know, and we'll do another one. But yeah, thank you guys. This has been my dream, and I brought you both in, and it became your dream too, and you've been busting your asses, and we're cash flow positive, and there's a bunch of successful gyms, and we're growing like crazy, and God damn, it was stressful, and it's not going to stop being stressful, but I'd rather be doing this than working for somebody else. And I'd rather be bringing Starting Strength to the world than there's only a couple other things I could think of myself doing. And this is basically ideal, right? It's like work with people you enjoy working with, do work that's meaningful, help people if you can. And if you can do all that and make some money, what else is there?
It's pretty sweet.
Like, yeah.
So thanks for being on the show, guys.
Yeah.
All right. See ya.